Wayne said he needed plenty of time today, which was, I told him was good news for me because you guys hear me talk way too much. Wayne is not only past president of our club in Thomasville, but he is also a past assistant governor for our district and has been very active in our club. So Wayne, I'm going to turn it over to you to share our program today.
All right, thank you very much.
Such a crazy thing.
How was that for a good start?
I was doing like 5 other things, so I kind of missed it.
Oh, okay. Well, here you go. I'll hold it up for you again.
Okay, there we go. Very good.
I'm the stand-in program for today, and so that's why I'm interrupting the regularly scheduled program. If you have any,
Wayne, I am sorry. Let me interrupt you just a minute because I just realized I did not have David Snap introduce his guest today. So if you don't mind, let's switch over to David and let him introduce Lizette.
Oh, you need signs. You need one of those signs.
Need a sign? Yeah, I got your sign. Thanks, President Hope. We've got joining us today Lizette Flores. She was introduced to me by a fellow friend. She is currently the supervisor for environmental services at Novant Thomasville Medical Center. She is wanting to be involved in the community and be a female business owner. We had a great Zoom call last week and talked about kind of her aspirations and being involved in the community and building a business. She's got a servant's heart. I think she'd be a great Rotarian. So I wanted to invite her to the Zoom today. And so Lizette, my apologies that I'm working from home and kind of been out of pocket since we last talked, but definitely glad that you're joining us today. And hope you get a lot out of the meeting and certainly join us again in the future and any week. We're more than happy to have you.
Thank you, Mr. Snap, and I really appreciate the invitation. I do see that I have a couple of my work colleagues that are actually attending this program as well. So, I look forward to the future and see what all I can help with.
Wonderful. Lizette, thank you so much for being with us today. And so, Wayne, now I'll interrupt the regularly scheduled program and turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you. Well, you completely blew my train of thought. I'll see if I can get back on the tracks here. Do what? I prepared this program over the past few days, looking and planning to talk about the future. But since I prepared it in the past, what I prepared is now in the past or is in the present. So I don't know how relevant this will all be. My wife and I usually on Sunday mornings watch Meet the Press, and then after it goes off, Joel Osteen comes on. And I'm not a huge Joel Osteen fan, but I usually try to watch every week to catch his corny joke. And his corny joke from a week or two ago actually fits sort of what I'm going to talk about today. And in it, they had a archaeologist up in New York, and he dug down 10 feet and he finds a bunch of copper cables. And he theorizes, he said, well, I guess about 100 years ago, they had a huge telephone system here. Out in California, another archaeologist, he digs down 20 feet. He finds the same thing, a whole bunch of copper cables. And he said, they must have had a tremendous telegraph system here 200 years ago. Down in Texas, Bubba digs down 30 feet and doesn't find anything. And he says, they must have had a tremendous wireless system here in Texas 300 years ago. So the point being, even if you're looking backwards in time, it's hard to figure out exactly what happened or what's going on. Everybody that's a Rotarian gets this magazine. Who reads it? I can tell by the looks, nobody reads it. There you go, Doug. I was in a conversation with John Spillman the other day, and he had been trying to remember some quote that he was going to use in a presentation. And I asked him, I said, well, John, do you read the Rotarian magazine? And he said, no. And I said, well, what you're looking for is in this issue, so you need to start reading it. I used to not read it. I mean, I would glance at it every month, but I really didn't have, I didn't make the time to sit down and read the thing. But now that I'm partially retired, I have that opportunity. And so I did actually read through this one fairly well. And since I have the time, I also don't have any money. David Snap has told me that since I'm past Christmas, all I can spend money on in January is food and utilities, and next month I have to choose one. So we'll see how February works out for us here at the Underwood household. And I told him I was going to drag him a little bit. But in this issue this month, there's actually a whole section on the future. And they have different Rotarians that have written in on different topics, and I'm going to kind of hit on a little bit of each one. But I'd encourage you to drag this magazine out from wherever it's at. Hopefully it's not in the bottom of your trash can right now. And read through this, because it's really some good, interesting information. But there are sections here on philanthropy, water, reading, travel, language, environmentalism, leadership, migration, and the past. And it starts off, it says in 1915, Paul Harris was writing, and he said, what Rotary will be in 100 years hence, none living can imagine. And Rotary is 110 years old this year, and it's definitely different than it was when it started out. Looking at the first section, it's on philanthropy. And think about how our views on philanthropy have changed over the years. What they're talking about here is effective altruism, and it's looking at how you can do the most good with your resources. And I think that's something everyone has always tried to think about. You know, what can I do with my resources that will do the most good for the most people? But I think, when you start out younger, then altruism has kind of a local feel for you, you know, taking care of your family, taking care of your neighborhood, taking care of people that you know. But as you grow, then you also grow in both age and maybe finances, then you have the ability to reach out further than that. And one of the quotes in here says, all humans are equally deserving of our moral concern, regardless of where they live. And I think that's one of the strong points about being a Rotarian is by being a Rotarian, you have the opportunity to reach people all over the world with your money, with your time, and with your love. And polio would be a very good example of that. You know, polio started out as I guess maybe originally just as a U.S. thing. You know, they were going to eradicate polio in the U.S. But then Rotary International gets involved, and then it becomes an international project. And now polio is almost eradicated. But one of the things that was interesting here in this is that a new line of thinking about philanthropy is thinking about how you can affect future generations with the monies that you give. And that kind of totally changes the picture. True, eradicating polio changes the lives of both those currently living and in the future. But what other types of things, should Rotary or should we as individuals be thinking about that we could be involved in that would change things for future generations? And I read a lot of things, and I hear a lot of things, and some of them are disturbing to me. I heard a thing the other day that they have discovered that there are microplastics in a lot of human embryos, and that they've taken water samples from all over the world, and they find microplastics in there. So, what kind of impact is that having upon our bodies, upon the lives of future generations? And, is that something, that I should be concerned about and could actually do something about? So, what can we do today that would positively impact future generations? The next section they had in here was on water. And I'll give you the 3 or 4 little statistics they have here first. By 2030, and I think of these years, and when I graduated high school, I would have never imagined to even live to see 2020, much less 2030. And so, these dates are becoming real to me now as I get closer to them. But by 2030, the annual water requirements will exceed the current sustainable water supplies by 40%. That's 10 years from now. By 2040, nearly 600 million children will live in areas of extremely high water stress. By 2050, the number of people at risk from floods will increase from 1.6 billion from 1.2 billion. So in a way, those numbers don't, or what it's saying doesn't seem to make any sense. They're in a very short period, there'll be people that are impacted by lack of water, but then by 2050, there are going to be people that are impacted dramatically by too much water. And that's we're seeing that already. And that's how the article starts off. It's written by someone who lives in Charleston. And they said that in the 2000s, Charleston might have a few flooding events every year. And now last year, they had 40 to 50, this is what's been averaging for the past few years, 40 to 50 flooding events in downtown Charleston. And it's impacting their lives in that the author here, they said they work on one side of town and their kids' daycare is on the other side of town. And they have to be able to properly plan so that if there's a flood, how can they go get their kids? So, that's disturbing. And, without talking about global warming or climate change, I don't know what's causing all this stuff. Maybe it's just cyclical. But regardless, these are things that are impacting our lives and the lives of people that we live around. But there's been huge progress made, I think, in the US on water conservation. I can remember going to a Rotary program over at the High Point Club one time. And the lady that was doing the presentation, she said, and I don't remember the amount, but it's a tremendous amount of water that we waste every year just by brushing our teeth and letting the water run while we brush our teeth. And, then she goes on to, to talk about people in other parts of the world that are struggling to have enough water. And I can't put the two pieces together where if I turn my water off, it's going to wind up over there to help them out. But somehow it's all connected. And I think, that's a biblical perspective and it's a moral perspective that somehow we are all connected together and that what I do affects you and affects someone else. But neat statistics, positive in a way, is that from 2005 to 2015, the typical American went from using 100 gallons of water per day to 83 gallons. And so, water usage is going down, and that's a good thing. If we had continued using the water at the same rate, we would have used 5 billion more gallons of water a day than we were using then. And that's a big number. So that's a lot of water. From other areas, then it's also changed. The US uses less water every day for all purposes than it did in 1965. We've tripled the amount of the economy without using a single new gallon of water. So, there are positive things that are happening. And, it says well-managed water undergirds the entire economy. We don't appreciate that very often. A city that floods once a week, a city that has to ration drinking water, a city that has to brace for destruction with every hurricane season or every fire season. These are not places that are appealing for economic growth. And so water, whether it's too much of it or not enough of it or not clean, these are all things that impact our lives now and into the future. The next is on reading. And I thought Kim's comments, about who actually reads the bulletin, were kind of fitting as I looked at this. The writer here begins by saying, is there a future for reading in the United States? And there's been a dramatic change in my lifetime in how people get their information. When I was growing up, and that's what it refers to here, was, post World War II, then Americans typically passed their evenings reading books or newspapers or listening to comedies, dramas, or ball games on the radio. And it was a verbal culture. There was, whether it be verbal on print or verbal via the media, but words spoken or read were the principal means of communication. And, and that's true. I grew up as a very strong reader. Of course, my mother was an English teacher, so that probably contributed some to that. But look at things now. How do people get their information now? Most of it comes via tablets or screens or televisions, and very little of it actually comes from reading the material itself. And as a result, we're seeing things that are negatively impacting the younger generations. I heard a interview on NPR with a Black school teacher. He was a male, and he said, that there are very few male Black school teachers in the systems, but he was really talking about reading. And he said that if you want children to be good readers, then you need to not only read to them, but they need to see you reading. They need to know that that's an important part of your life, that that you value the ability to read and that you enjoy reading. And I grew up reading Hardy Boys books and all kinds of books that were interesting, and not just the classics, which were sometimes not so interesting. But the thing about reading is that it connects you to everything. If you're not a good reader, then you have difficulties pretty much in anything else that you try to do. And in the article here, they call this the Mandarin effect, referring to the period in China where the Mandarins were the ruling class, and they were the only ones that knew how to read and write. And the fear is that unless things change in the United States and around the world, that we'll wind up with a subclass of people who are unable to read accurately and with comprehension. And that's going to impact everything they do in their life. Travel. This has been a tough few months for us here at the Underwood house. I mean, I think Hope had a very unusual Christmas, but lots of families did. And our plan was for our younger son and his wife to come up here from Texas. It would have been the first time we've seen them since June. But they called us about a week before they were to be here, and they'd been to her parents, and her stepfather had just been diagnosed with COVID. And so they canceled their trip. And then we had planned, we'll come down there. And so, I make all the arrangements and we're planning to go, and then things go sideways in another direction. And so we canceled that trip. And we thought, well, we'll move it up to Martin Luther King weekend because she's involved in the school system. So he'd have 3 days, she'd have 3 days. And with things the way they are now, we're just afraid to travel. And so we canceled that also. And so, 3 travel trips have been canceled, due to the way things are. Looking forward, I'm looking forward to the ability to travel getting back to normal. I'm looking forward to people being able to get out and see other people face to face. And, I've told Kim and Joseph and some other folks this, I really miss seeing all of you face to face. We're seeing each other face to face now, but it's not the same. The physical contact, the being together physically means a lot. And, I miss that. But, looking at the future of travel, they're saying that some of the biggest changes are going to be in improvements in biometric identification, such as facial, retina, and fingerprint recognition. And anybody that's traveled internationally over the past few years and had to go through customs, then that's how it works now. They fingerprint you, they take your picture, and, they're probably looking at all that, they're getting it all together. So they can pretty much know who you are as soon as you walk up to the monitor, even before you pull out your passport. But the interesting thing, it said that the industry is set to embrace robotics in a big way. And so they're going to be moving to have robots that are able to do voice recognition, and robots will be manning the phones when you place your reservations, or you call to check on a reservation, or you do anything. And so the calls will probably be as frustrating now as they are, or then as they are now, because lots of times, I'll place calls to Blue Cross or one of the other companies that we deal with, and I have difficulties understanding the person I'm speaking with. I'll just leave it at that. But other things, like driverless cars, I can't imagine. I don't even want to be on the highway with a driverless car, just to be honest about it. But those types of things are coming. And anybody that's seen, have y'all, I don't know, anyone seen the YouTube video of the dancing robots? They have these robots by, it's Boston Analytical or some company that's developed them. And it's beyond belief. I mean, you'd almost think it was computer generated what these robots are doing, but it's not. It's real, and it's real life. So, beyond technology, COVID is going to change, or has already, but will continue to change a lot of things. And they're predicting that over the next 10 years, RV sales will go way up. People are going to be thinking about different ways of traveling and being safe, because if you can drive your own house wherever you're going, then you can kind of contain yourself in there. And Airbnb, and that's another thing that's new that wasn't there 10, 15 years ago, but is very popular now. They said that there'll also be hygiene checks, where if you're passing through airports, then they're going to be monitoring your temperature. They're going to be looking to see if you're sick, and things like that have been going on in Asia for years. I mean, every time I'd go to Asia, then you'd be walking past people with monitors, and they're infrared monitors, and they're looking for people that have temperatures. And so was common there then, but it's going to be common everywhere, I think, at some point. But says, look for airlines and hotels to capitalize on the cleanliness craze by offering added cost hygienic upgrades or more expensive deep cleaned suites. So, would you be willing to pay extra to have them deep clean where you're going to be staying? But it's possible. And I would have never thought of this. It says that in 2019, it was a heavy travel year. And this was pre-COVID, but it caused a lot of communities and areas around the world to rethink, do we really want all this tourism? Because it was impacting not only their cultural life, but their environmental life by having so many people come in. And so another prediction is that communities will take this as an opportunity to perhaps restrict the amount of people that can travel there for tourism type reasons. Seems counterintuitive to what they'd want, but it's a possibility. And then there'll be different types of fuel: hydrogen fuel, electric cars, cruise ships that are 100% electric. All these things are going to be changing somehow, some way. Language. Who thinks texting is ruining the language? Well, I do too. But this, if you're into language or into to communication, then the section on language and on reading, you should get this magazine out and read the whole article, because it to me, it brought to light some things, or some misconceptions that I have. Language is the way we communicate. And everyone thinks that things are getting worse than they used to be. But says the death of language has been around almost as long as the language itself. William Caxton, a well-known English printer, complained that the English language had changed so much since he was young that native speakers could barely understand each other. That was written in 1490. A century and a half before that, a monk complained that the English language had become so degraded from its contact with the Danes and the French, who'd taken turns running different parts of Britain, that it was now nothing more than a lot of inarticulate grunting. So it doesn't matter when you lived in time, everybody thinks the language is being impacted negatively. And technology brings a lot of things, a lot of possibilities, to us. It gives us the ability to communicate instantly. And, for even though we've missed seeing my son and his wife in Texas, then we're able to talk to them regularly, or we can have FaceTime with them. And so, the communication itself, or the medium itself, is great. It's good to have that. I think texting does, somewhat limit or it changes the conversation. Maybe that's a good way of saying it. When you have to type something out, and for me, it's like this, I'm not one of the thumb texters. Then it takes, by the time I get it typed out, I forgot where I was going with it. So, but my son and his age group, they're all over it. Literacy rates around the world are actually rising as a result of technology. And that's because so many people in so many countries now have the access to cell phones and the ability to text, that it's causing them or leading them to learn how to at least have basic communication skills where they can type and talk. Some of the other degradations we blame on modern technology are some of the acronyms that people use. OMG. Anybody have an idea when that was first used? Over 100 years ago by Winston Churchill. How about IDK? That was used by American soldiers in World War I. So, some of these little things, that we take and we think, well, the millennials or somebody cooked this up, just to confuse us. They've been around for years. And my sons have accused me of being out of touch, and I've kind of embraced that. But, they're right. In some ways, I'm out of touch with what was and what is. But I'm trying to catch myself up. Environmentalism. And I'm probably gonna want to stop on this one because I'll probably run out of time here shortly. Environmentalism to a lot of people is a dirty word, or they look at an environmentalist as a tree hugger or somebody that's trying to save the spotted owl. And without going into whether we've gone too far or whether we've not gone far enough with environmentalism, I think we can all agree that we in ways are better off with the U.S. environment now than we were at some point in time. I mean, I can remember the things being dirtier in the early 70s as far as the air than they are now. Think about the other things that are that have been positively impacted. We have more efficient homes that they use less energy. They're easier to heat. So, that saves you money, easier to heat and cool. We have cars, we have cars that are smarter and more efficient. And so they emit less pollution, they save more fuel, they're safer and cheaper to drive. And in some ways, they're more fun. Although some of the new things I hate. We got one of the Subaru Outbacks not long ago, and it has the big screen in the middle of the console where it's a touch screen. And so, if you want to turn on your heated seat, you have to touch the thing in the right place in the right order. And to me, that's dangerous. I'd much rather have a button that I can just flip it on and off. But here again, that's me. We've been able to reduce food waste, promote healthier diets. Farmers are more sustainable and more profitable. We have made a lot of progress in the environment itself in the U.S. And really, without a healthy environment and without a long-term commitment to maintaining a healthy environment, we can't have a healthy and thriving society. And so, rather than look at environmentalism in a negative way, perhaps we all ought to look at the environment or the things that we can affect in the environment that we can touch and have a positive impact and maybe fix something. The litter sweep is a great example. We're able to get out there and do something. I'm gonna hit one more and then I'm gonna stop. Leadership. How do you think and I'm asking a question that you really can't answer unless everyone started unmuting themselves. But I think leadership styles is something else that has changed and will continue to change. In the article here, there were two people that were playing basketball and they're arguing back and forth. One was a European, one's an American, about different styles of leadership. And the American is saying, you know, that leaders need to achieve their aims, and to do that, they need to be results oriented. And so whatever gets you to the result are the things that you need to do. And the European, on the contrast, says that a leader's accomplishments are defined by the quality of their people and their ability to rally around the cause. You can't teach leadership. It's a process of continuous learning. I don't know how leadership changes going into the future. I know that there are different ways of that people lead. They reference Phil Jackson in here, the Chicago Bulls, LA Lakers coach, and he wanted to win tournaments. He wanted to win games, but it says that he was also very interested in developing each of his players to their maximum potential. And that by doing that, by focusing on the individual rather than just the end result, he was getting the end result. So, you know, it's a different style of leadership. And I think, you know, as we move forward in our area of life and as Rotarians, you know, it's another thing that is changing. They say three things crucial for future leaders. They need to understand the means are as important as the ends. They need to use a decentralized and participatory style of management. And they need to apply a multicultural approach to solving the world's problems. I'm going to stop there. I mean, I really didn't cover migration or the past, but I'd encourage you to drag this magazine out. And there was actually another section in here I wanted to touch on, but I knew I wouldn't have enough time. It's a great resource, and it's worthy of your reading. So with that, I appreciate your time, and hopefully no one's going to call Kim and complain. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Appreciate that. Save that information. Kim probably call on you to do a program later on and share the things you didn't get around to today. Yep, she gave me the thumbs up on that. So gosh, Wayne, I appreciate that. And you know, I'm guilty of I very rarely take that magazine out and read it. I do read. I read a lot, but that's not usually a resource I refer to. And you know, and hearing you speak through some of those things, it really it called to mind for me a term that's used in yoga, where every part of the body is connected. When you move one thing, it has an effect on another. And what you just described is every part of our world, every part of our environment, every part of our culture, our language, and our travel is connected. And the things, you know, that impact something in one direction in one place impact another direction in another place. And I really appreciate that comment on philanthropy too, about how when you're thinking about how to give, you know, of your resources, think about that impact it has on future generations, not just the now, but the future. So again, Wayne, thank you for sharing with us. Greatly appreciate you doing the program and finding some great information to share as well.